Hey folks, just a quick note before we get started. I do realize that there are a couple questions raised in this video that do get answered in the follow-up Terra Firma Part 2. However, this video being just for Part 1, those questions are still up in the air when I recorded this, so keep that in mind. Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. Welcome to another edition of the Disco Deep Dive, where I take a look at the Easter eggs, canon connections, and continuity bits from a recent episode of Star Trek Discovery. In this episode, we are talking about Season 3, Episode 9, Terra Firma, Part 1. Warning for spoilers: if you've not seen the episode, you may wish to click away now. At the start of the episode, we get a return visit from the mysterious Kovich, played by David Cronenberg. He introduces us to Lieutenant Commander Yor, apparently a time soldier during the Temporal Wars. The Temporal Wars have been mentioned several times during Discovery's third season and refer to the conflict that went hot after the Temporal Cold War, mentioned in Star Trek Enterprise. He mentions that Yor was not only a time traveler, but also had traveled between universes, saying that he crossed over from a universe created by a Romulan mining ship. This would seem to be a reference to the alternate reality known as the Kelvin timeline, created in the 2009 Star Trek film, when Ambassador Spock went back in time via a black hole following the destruction of Romulus. The villainous Nero also travels back in time, arriving in the 23rd century and changing history by destroying the USS Kelvin, along with Captain James T. Kirk's father, George Kirk. From this point on, the two universes diverge, and the universe seen in the three films, Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond, exists separate from what we know as the Prime Timeline, the timeline that contains Star Trek the original series, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Discovery, and Enterprise, and Star Trek Picard, and pretty much anything else that comes along the pike from CBS Studios. This is significant because it is the first mention in the Prime timeline of the existence of the Kelvin timeline. I love this in that it brings all of Star Trek under one umbrella and acknowledges it all as a shared multiverse. It should also be noted that Yor wears a uniform very similar to the uniform seen in the first two seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation and in the third season on background characters. There are a few subtle differences, however. Despite being referred to as a lieutenant commander, Yor's uniform does not feature any sort of rank indication such as pips on the collar. Also missing is the colored department piping that exists on the cuffs of the pants on this style of uniform as seen in Star Trek The Next Generation. One final thing about Yor before I move on: he appears to be a Betelgeusian, an alien first seen in the background in Star Trek The Motion Picture. The villainous Cosmo seen in the first episode of this season, That Hope Is You Part 1, was also a Betelgeusian. In order to help Georgiou, the Discovery must travel to the planet Danis 5, a world located near the Galactic Rim just shy of the Gamma Quadrant. The Galactic Rim was seen in a number of episodes of Star Trek the original series, including the second pilot episode Where No Man Has Gone Before. At the Galactic Rim is an intense energy field preventing people from leaving or entering the Milky Way galaxy. The Gamma Quadrant was the site of a number of adventures in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The other end of the Bajoran wormhole terminated in the Gamma Quadrant and is home to the Dominion, primary antagonists of that series. When talking about how the computer has merged with the sphere data, Kovich says that may be good for movie night. This refers to an earlier episode this season when the Discovery computer recommended a movie night for the crew of Discovery to unwind and deal with some of the trauma they've had to contend with so far this season. At one point, Vance questions Burnham and her readiness to take on this mission, which may see the end of Georgiou. He refers to Burnham's experience with Arium and her inability to let her go. This is a reference to the second season episode Project Daedalus, when Arium had been taken over by Section 31's Control Threat Assessment program. In order to end the threat, Arium had to be sacrificed, and Burnham found herself unable to do so. At one point, Georgiou says to Burnham, "Lead me to my death, Angel Michael." This would seem to be a reference to Michael Burnham's time spent as the Red Angel, as revealed in Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. Before beaming down to Danis 5, Georgiou makes her goodbyes to Saru and Tilly. I don't know about you, but to me, these goodbyes feel very final. I believe that we may be seeing the end of the Mirror Georgiou's involvement in Star Trek Discovery. This would of course pave the way for her involvement in the spin-off series Star Trek Section 31, which we know that Michelle Yeoh will be involved in as the lead character. This episode also has a writing credit for Bo-Yeon Kim and Erica Leipold, who are the head writers for Section 31, so it seems likely that this may be Georgiou's swan song from the series. On the surface of the planet, we meet the mysterious Carl. There's some debate in fandom as to what this mysterious entity is. There are some that believe that he is a Q, and he certainly exhibits many of the qualities that can be associated with the Q and John Delancey's portrayal of a member of the Q continuum. However, there is a lot of compelling evidence that may point to his being something else that we've seen in the history of Star Trek, the Guardian of Forever, the temporal portal first seen in the TOS episode The City on the Edge of Forever. For one thing, the newspaper that he holds is the Star Dispatch, the same newspaper that showed the news of Edith Keeler, either her death or her alternate timeline. Speaking of that newspaper, there are a number of Easter eggs on it that bear a close inspection. We have the lead article about Georgiou's fate. We have another article reporting the USS Jenolan as missing. This is the starship as seen in the TNG episode Relics, the one that carried Scotty in the transporter buffer from the 23rd century to the 24th. This was not strictly time travel, as he was literally kept in the transporter buffer on the ship, crashed on the surface of the Dyson Sphere for nearly a century. There's another article about the Tucson Empire facing a supernova. The Tucson Empire is from the TNG episode The Last Outpost and was an ancient empire that thrived many centuries before the 24th century. We can also see that the paper costs 15 quatlus. Quatlus are a currency from the planet Triskelion in the TOS episode The Gamesters of Triskelion. On the back of the paper, lending credence to the idea that Carl may be a guardian of forever, we see an ad for the 21st Street Mission, which was the soup kitchen run by Edith Keeler in the aforementioned City on the Edge of Forever. We also see towards the bottom of the page a section written in Vulcan script. Back on the Discovery, it's determined that the ship in the nebula sending the distress call from the previous episode is in fact a Kelpian starship, and Saru and the crew witness a distress call played in a loop from that ship. The Kelpian shown in this message is played by Hannah Spear, who also played Saru's sister, Sirana, in the Short Treks episode The Brightest Star, as well as the Discovery Season 2 episode The Sound of Thunder. Mentioned by the Kelpian in the distress call is the USS Hiraga Ganai, which would seem to be named after a polymath who lived during the Edo period of Japan. After Georgiou steps through the mysterious door on Danis 5, she finds herself thrust back in time and in the mirror universe, back in her role as Emperor Georgiou. It's unknown whether this is only in her mind or if this is in fact reality, but regardless, Georgiou finds herself wanting to make changes to the timeline as it originally unfolded. She finds herself near the commissioning event for the ISS Charon, her flagship as seen in Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. It is also near the beginning of Lorca's coup, an attempt by Gabriel Lorca of the Mirror Universe to overthrow the Emperor. This was a primary part of Season 1's plot. During this section of the episode, we also see the familiar agonizers, a device used by Mirror Universe personnel as punishment, first seen in the TOS episode Mirror Mirror, which introduced the concept of the Mirror Universe. We also see several Mirror Universe characters, including Arium, in the Mirror Universe sans her technological augments. This is interesting given that we saw Arium of the Mirror Universe in a comic series. However, that not being canon, the show is free to go in a different direction, and it appears they have decided to do so. We also see the Mirror Landry very much alive and well at this early stage. And due to the actions of Georgiou, if this is in fact reality, we see there are several changes to the timeline as it unfolded in Season 1. For example, Paul Stamets is killed by Georgiou. We saw him alive after this point in the Mirror Universe. And the Mirror Michael Burnham is not killed by Georgiou for the crime of trying to overthrow the Emperor. Well, those were the Easter eggs that I found for Terra Firma Part 1. Were there any that I missed? Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, of course, as usual, to my Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for your help. I really do appreciate it. To everyone else, thank you so much for watching this video and this channel. I really, truly do appreciate that. That is quite literally, as I say every week, the best thing you can do for me is to watch the videos that I put out on this channel. If you have any suggestions for things to cover and ways that I can improve the channel, please let me know in the comments. I would also love to hear that. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, as always, live long and prosper.